Welcome to Mystery Stories for Sleep, where the unknown meets the mysterious. Relax, unwind, and let the intrigue carry you into the night. Your journey into the strange begins now.
All right, so today we're really diving deep into a topic that I think, well, it sends chills down your spine, but it's something you can't really look away from, and that's witch hunts. And, before we get started, I think it's important to think about this not as just cauldrons and pointy hats, the kind of stereotypical imagery. We're talking about centuries, not years, where this fear of witches gripped Europe.
Yeah, it's really important to set the stage here in the 15th to 18th centuries.
Yeah.
Europe wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Plagues were ravaging communities. There were wars that seemed to be constant. And the Catholic Church was facing its own challenges to authority. And, in times of turmoil like these, people are really craving explanations. And often, that's when scapegoats emerge.
Right, and it's during this backdrop of instability that the fear of witchcraft really explodes. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands accused, tortured, even executed across Europe. One of the things that really stopped me in my tracks with the research was this mention of the Malleus Maleficarum, which translates to Hammer of Witches, essentially a witch hunting guidebook published in 1487. Can you unpack this a little bit for us?
Yeah, so this wasn't just any book. This was something that was used to legitimize persecution. And the Malleus Maleficarum really outlined methods for identifying and then prosecuting suspected witches. And what's really chilling about it is how it solidified that image of a witch, and particularly targeted women. This wasn't just about magic. This was about societal anxieties, and they were being projected onto a specific group.
That's really unsettling because we often link witch hunts to Salem, Massachusetts, almost like the go-to example of mass hysteria.
And for good reason. Salem in 1692 really vividly shows how quickly suspicion can spiral out of control, especially in a community that was very isolated and deeply, deeply religious. So in just a year, over 200 people were accused, 20 lives were lost, all based on what they called spectral evidence. So imagine being condemned because someone claims they saw your spirit harming others. It seems utterly unbelievable now.
Well, it begs the question then, why women? Was this a prejudice that was fueled by things like the Malleus Maleficarum?
Sadly, yes. I mean, throughout history, those who don't conform often become the easiest targets, especially women, widows, healers, those who are outspoken. And it exposes a really deep-rooted misogyny that's uncomfortable to confront, but it's crucial to understanding this period.
So we've got this societal unrest, we have this guidebook that's demonizing individuals, and then the Salem trials exploding with this spectral evidence. It's like this chain reaction of fear. But what I'm grappling with is why such fervent belief in the first place? Was it purely social control? Or were there other factors that played into this?
Well, one theory that's been put forward and it's hotly debated is the role of ergot poisoning.
Ergot poisoning. Now that's a new term for me.
So think about the staple food of the time, rye bread. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye, and if consumed, it can induce hallucinations and even convulsions. So to those unfamiliar with ergot, these symptoms might seem like, well, witchcraft.
That's a fascinating and frankly disturbing connection. So accusations might have stemmed from something as simple as a bad batch of bread. It makes you wonder just how much of this frenzy was fueled by misunderstanding.
It's a possibility. Yeah. And one that underscores the complexity of this period. However, while ergot poisoning is a captivating theory, it can't explain the entire picture, particularly when we look at who truly benefited from these accusations.
You're right. It feels like there's more to uncover here. We've got the backdrop, we've got the beliefs, we've even got a possible biological trigger, but something tells me this deep dive is far from over. So we were talking about ergot poisoning, but you hinted at something else at play here too. This idea of somebody benefiting from these accusations, which is kind of a chilling thought, but it feels like a missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's unsettling. But when we look at history, fear and power often go hand in hand. So consider this. Who gained the most when somebody was branded a witch? Often, it was those already in control.
You're saying these accusations could almost be weaponized, a way to eliminate rivals or silence opposition under this guise of righteous anger.
Precisely. Imagine accusing someone of witchcraft. It's a powerful claim and very hard to disprove, especially in this climate that was completely fueled by fear. It's a stark reminder of how easily belief can be manipulated for personal or political gain.
It's a disturbing parallel to draw, especially with the Malleus Maleficarum framing a lot of these accusations. Creates a system that is really ripe for exploitation. Makes you wonder, beyond the tragic loss of life, what was the lasting impact of this era? Did these witch hunts, these periods of intense fear, fundamentally change European society?
Absolutely. The witch hunts left an indelible mark on Europe. They created a climate of suspicion and fear that permeated communities for generations. We see it in the social fabric. We see it in the legal systems that were put in place, even just in the way people view their neighbors. Trust was broken, and the scars of those divisions lingered long after the official witch hunt subsided.
It's like you said earlier, the need to find a scapegoat, it seems like a universal human flaw, and this period in history really amplifies that darkness. But if we're connecting these historical events to the present, it feels almost impossible not to ask, could something like this happen again? I mean, we might not be accusing people of witchcraft, but haven't there been echoes of this kind of mass hysteria in more recent times?
Yeah, you've hit upon a crucial point. While we may not see witch hunts in the same form today, the underlying themes are still there. Fear of the other, the desire for simple explanations, the allure of pointing fingers, those haven't vanished. Think about it. The rapid spread of information, the power of social media, it creates a different kind of breeding ground for suspicion and outrage.
Different methods, same dynamics. Are you saying that we're just as susceptible to this mob mentality now as they were back then? It's easy to think that we've evolved past that, but history seems to be full of cautionary tales.
And that's why understanding the witch hunts is so important. It's not about dwelling on a dark chapter, but rather recognizing the patterns, the warning signs, so that we can be more discerning, more critical. In the face of fear and accusation, think about the Salem trials. They were fueled by spectral evidence, by rumors, and by fear. Don't we see similar dynamics in how quickly online accusations can spiral? Reputations tarnished without due process?
It's like a modern-day witch hunt, just without the actual witches. That's a pretty thought-provoking parallel that you're drawing. But how do we break the cycle? Are we doomed to repeat these mistakes just with different labels?
It's not about being doomed, but about being aware. By understanding the historical context, the societal anxieties that fueled these witch hunts, we could better recognize those same forces at play today.
So knowledge is power. That by understanding the past, we can hopefully create a different future.
In a way, yes. But it's not just about knowledge, it's about critical thinking. We can't just accept information at face value, especially in a world that is completely saturated with news and opinions. We have to ask questions, consider multiple perspectives, be wary of those who benefit from sowing fear and division.
It's about being more than just a consumer of information. It's about being an active participant, an analyst, even a skeptic when necessary.
Precisely. And that brings us to a fascinating point about the legacy of the witch hunts. For all the darkness they represent, there's also a growing fascination, even a reclaiming of the witch figure in modern culture.
Oh, that is interesting. So we've gone from historic horror to, a cultural resurgence. How did that shift happen?
It's complex, but in part, it's about reclaiming a narrative. Remember, those accused were often marginalized, mostly women, deemed a threat to the established order. Today, the witch is often seen as a symbol of female empowerment, of challenging norms, of embracing the unconventional car.
So from fear and persecution, we've arrived at empowerment. That's a twist I wasn't expecting. But it makes you think about how we process history, you know?
Yeah, it's not about erasing the past, but rather understanding how those narratives evolve. The witch, once a figure of dread, is now often associated with independence, even rebellion. Think about how witches are portrayed in movies and books, rarely the villain anymore.
It's true, they're often the protagonists now, the ones with the power to fight back against injustice. It's like a complete 180 from the image that the Malleus Maleficarum tried to paint.
And that shift in perception is significant. It speaks to a kind of cultural reclamation, a reinterpretation of history that really resonates, especially at a time when so many are still fighting for their voices to be heard.
This has been such a layered discussion. We've gone from plague-ridden Europe to the Malleus Maleficarum to Salem's spectral evidence, even hallucinogenic bread. But throughout it, all these themes of power, fear, and this very human need to find someone to blame have been impossible to ignore.
And that's the key takeaway here. We often think of witch hunts as these relics of the past. But it's by understanding the forces that drove them, the societal anxieties, the manipulation of beliefs, the silencing of dissent, that we equip ourselves to recognize those same patterns in the present, even when they wear different masks.
Yeah, it's about being vigilant. about questioning these narratives that prey on fear or seek to divide us. At the start of this deep dive, I thought we were exploring this dark corner of history, but it's clear that this isn't just history, is it? It's a reflection of who we are, how we react to uncertainty, and ultimately the choices that we make in the face of fear.
Precisely. And those choices, they really do matter.
Yeah.
Will we succumb to these same patterns of accusation and division that fueled the witch hunts? Or will we choose critical thinking, empathy, and a commitment to justice, even when it's difficult? These are questions that resonate far beyond any history book.
Powerful stuff. So to our listener out there, the next time you encounter a story that feels too easily divided into good versus evil, remember this conversation. Remember the witch hunts, and ask yourself, who benefits from this narrative? What are the underlying anxieties being exploited? And most importantly, am I playing a role, even unknowingly, in perpetuating the cycle of fear and accusation?
Because the echoes of the witch hunts, they aren't just whispers from the past. They're a reminder of the choices we face every day. And the stories we tell, the information that we share, and the way we treat those who are different from us.
It's a lot to ponder, but as always, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, stay aware.